All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For those of you here live, Christiane and Kay, welcome. And for those of you watching on recording, great to have you here, or great to have you here later. I want to do a quick introduction of who we are, and then we'll jump into some stuff that will help your athletes and will help your teams or your children athletes, whatever that looks like, depending on what angle you're coming to us from. So I want to introduce my co-host, Amy Suter. Amy is a legendary softball player. She played at the University of Washington. Oh, don't shake your head. No, you just take what you're getting. She was a coach at Texas Tech, where she went down to do her PhD in psychology, sports psychology. And she also came back from Texas Tech and ended up coaching in her home state of Washington at Western Washington, just down in Bellingham, not too far away from where we are. And so, yeah, she's just got a lot of knowledge about coaching, and as will come out in this talk, finding growth through sport and how that has taken both of our coaching levels to another level, so to speak. So, and a little bit about me, I've been a little bit older than Amy. I've been coaching for 43 years. I have coached everything from college to high school, to elementary school, to junior high, to middle school, to provincial team, that athletes move on to much higher levels. So between the two of us, we have a little bit of knowledge, and looking forward to sharing with you some models that will help your athletes. So yeah, Amy, welcome. And you're muted right now. There you go.
Thank you, Paul, for the kind introduction.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So as we sort of purported, we would be talking about a couple things today. One, the cycle of performance. We said we'd jump into the 4 laws of focus. So I think to get things started, let's talk about the cycle of performance. And I'm going to pull that up so you can all see what is the cycle of performance that they speak about it here at GrowthU. So let me find that. Got it. And I will share a screen here. Bear with me. All right. So to start this off, all of our models are based on sort of the principles of psychology. And this one really, in anything that we are going to learn, anything that we are going to do that's new, we will all move through this cycle of performance, or we can even call it the cycle of growth. And Amy, do you want to maybe just touch on sort of, where we start, where does this begin, and a little bit about what does inception mean?
Yeah, no, I love this. This model, I always say that every time I talk about them, I'm like, oh, this model is my favorite model. Okay. This model is definitely one of my favorite models, so that if we do another webinar and I say the same thing, you don't call me on it. This is human behavior, especially as athletes and parents of athletes and coaches. We always want to grow. We always want our kids to go to the next level. We want to go to the next level. It reminds us often of the New Year's resolutions, right? Like, I want this thing. And in inception, I'm so excited. My mind is in this land of imagination where I don't need to know what's next. I just know that it's possible, or at least I think it's possible. And you can see underneath that inception, that unconscious incompetence. What does this mean? This means that in that space, we have no idea what we don't know, right? Like, I'm going to go run 4 miles a day, right? I mean, my 70-year-old neighbor does it, so of course I can do it. It's just this and I have no idea that, I've got to do baseball practice, and I've got, dinner to cook, and I've got kids to like, none of that is popping up into our minds in inception. All it is imagination and desire for or an alignment with the desire that we want in the future. So that little A underneath their attitude, of course, our attitude's high. We're so excited about what's possible. And like I said, we're unconsciously incompetent. We have no idea what we don't know. And it doesn't matter in that moment. And because of that, our effort is very, very high. where, January 1st, when you make that, you don't miss that that day. You totally get your tasks done. January 1, 2, 3, you're nailing it. And then, what happens next, Paul, on, January 10th to like the 14th.
Yeah, well, I think January 8th or January 9th is called National Quitters Day.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
So there's a legit, it's like people quit. Why do they quit? Well, why is it called National Quitters Day? Well, what happens is after that inception phase, we hit what's called deception or resistance. And it's what happens when we're conscious, but we're incompetent. Like we're conscious of what we're doing, and we're like, our unconscious brain is going, what are we doing here? Like, we can't do this. And so speaking to the unconscious brain really quickly, I'm going to digress for a second because, and if we take this from an athlete perspective, think about back, and most of you on here are parents or coaches, but think back to your younger years when you first made that team, when that first team you ever made, it's like, oh, I'm so excited. And, everything was going to be awesome. I'm on the team. And then, 2 weeks after practices, the redundancy starts setting in of doing drills and coaches harping on you for, this, that, or the other, that it's not being done correctly. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh God, and then that inception phase is now worn off. Well, that's deception. That's resistance. And and every athlete goes through it. Everybody goes through it in whatever area, again, that you're learning. And so that deception phase, and I'll speak quickly, jumping back to the coaches, for those of you watching, if you're a parent or a coach, think about the toolbox of what you have and how you got there, and the coaches you had, the mentors you had, the teammates you had. And as you're applying that to today's athletes, how does it align? Because today's athletes are much different in a sense, because their experiences are different and their toolbox is different, because there's a whole lot of new shiny objects that now exist in their world, thanks to this thing. And so just think about that as you're processing through what we're talking about here. So back to deception. Now our attitude is low. We're like, oh, this is just way too hard. We're consciously incompetent. It's like, I don't know if I can be the athlete that I thought I could be at the beginning, because coach is saying this to me, or my parents are saying this to me, or my teammates are down on me, whatever that looks like. And the effort now, it's low. It's low. And so the belief of what you can do, this is where the coach has to come in really strong and give belief to that athlete. And this is where, as a coach, as a mentor, or as a parent, we need to be really supportive of our young athlete in this situation, because as they hit that deception, we need them to move through to, and I'm going to throw it back to Amy, into the next stage, which is, Amy?
Transformation. And yes, I love this, Paul. So this is why athletes are different, right? Because so often in life, we get excited about, and I'm speaking to myself here, we get excited about a lot of things. And the minute we hit deception, right, we usually do, we quit. And I don't want to say it's our fault, because to Paul's point, it's how our nervous system is wired. Our unconscious mind's job is to keep us safe and comfortable and exactly the same as a person we were yesterday, right? And so when you're in that deception phase, 95% of who you are is telling you, we're not going to do this thing, right? We're quitting. And without the accountability and the team and the people around you to move you into what we call transformation, oftentimes the world quits. And so what is transformation? Transformation is conscious competence. It means that now I know how difficult the thing's going to be, and I'm going to do it anyway. Right? And of course, some days I'm going to wake up and feel like a rock star, and I'm going to go get my workouts in. I'm going to, hit off the tees, get my reps in and all the sports that I'm doing, and my attitude's awesome. And other days I wake up and it's everything I can do to get out of bed. I don't want to go to practice. I don't want to report to my accountability buddy. I don't want to do the thing. And in transformation, it's work. It's hard work. And in order to stay in transformation, we have to keep our effort high, because the moment that the effort weans and we fall out of it, we will definitely go back into that deception. And remember, deception is just a space where all of our excuses live. It's natural. It's how we're wired. It's our unconscious mind keeping us the same. It's how it was designed. And it's our job in transformation to recognize this, to help our players and our kiddos recognize that this is normal. You're supposed to feel the grind. You're supposed to feel the resistance. That's why we're here together. It's the environment that we're creating together to keep our effort high, even when we don't feel good, right? Not everyone needs to be excited to show up to practice every day, but when you get there, you better put everything forward that you have. And it's conscious, which means there's a lot of thinking and doing and thinking and doing and thinking and doing. And Paul, when you do that thinking and doing for long enough, what happens next?
So that was beautiful. So we move into what that next stage is called identity. And what we know about identity, it's the strongest force in human nature, is to stay consistent with the identity you hold of yourself. And so that identity now becomes who you are. So, if you start going to the gym, right, and you work out a few times and you quit, and it's like you can go back. Once you've done it for 30, 45, 60 days, you wake up in the morning, and to Amy's point, when you don't feel like going, you're like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't want to go. But your identity says, no, we're going to the gym. Like, this is our identity now. This is what we do. This is, the Kobe Bryant of, like, I love the basketball players that were on the dream team. And, one, I can't remember which athlete it was, but he's like, I'm going to go down, I'm going to like get my practice in before anybody else. And then I'm going to go to breakfast. And he said he went down like 2 hours early, and he got there and Kobe was drenched in sweat, and he had been there since 4 a.m. And he just looked and went like, what? And so that's identity, right? It's like when you're just showing up and, like, it's just who you are. And so your attitude is high. You're now unconsciously competent. You know what you know, like it's part of who you are. And your effort is low. It doesn't take the effort to maintain that new identity that you've created. But again, in order to create that identity within the brain, it's a habit, it's a pattern. It takes 30, 45, 60 days to create that piece so that now you're an identity. And once you have an identity in one area of your life, whether it's the sport that you're doing or whatever, well, it's like, what's next? And to Amy's point, if you spend that time in transformation and you're not putting in the effort, she said you can slip back to deception. Imagine this cycle of performance as a skateboard ramp. So you're going up one side and you can come back down the other. And if you start something new, you're going to move back through. And also understand that those excuses that Amy was just speaking to live in your unconscious brain, and they're always going to surface and come up and go, we don't need to do this. It's too hard. I need to take a break. And again, once you've got to identity though, now those little unconscious thoughts that will pop up, you can squash them because your identity says, no, we're here. Whereas when you're in transformation, they have an opportunity to pop up and to throw you back into deception. So, Amy, any other thoughts or comments on this before we move through? And I can't see the chat right now, so I will, once I stop sharing screen, we'll see if there's any questions and if anybody else has joined. So,
and I can check the chat for us too. The big takeaway from this is it all makes sense, right? We're not teaching you anything that you don't already know. We're giving you language for the things that you already know and or already feel. I think the power with athletes, with kids, and with ourselves is to identify what these stages are and to prepare ourselves for them. Fun story, my daughter is into singing and performing, and she wanted to learn the guitar. And it was so odd because she said she wanted to learn the guitar, but there was so much resistance and hesitation around just signing up for guitar lessons. And I kept wondering, what's going on? So I'm the person who pushes a little bit. So I said, hey, Dad, right, why don't you figure it out? Like, go have conversations with, with Haley, and oops, I said her name. It's okay. And we were riding in the car one day, going to Starbucks, and we pull into Starbucks, and she said, hey, Mom, I'm ready for guitar lessons. Can you please sign me up? And I said, yes. And why did it take what was this all about? And she said, Mom, because I was preparing for deception, and I knew that when I told you I was ready for guitar lessons before I was actually ready for guitar lessons, you wouldn't have let me quit in deception. So I wanted to make sure that I was really ready to do the work before I said yes to the lessons. And I thought, wow, right, that in itself right there is the power of this model, because I'm going to commit and decide in inception that I want something and that I'm excited about the thing, knowing deception's coming. She knew that it was going to get tough and she wasn't going to want to practice. She wasn't going to want to do the things. but in that preparation, right, when it showed up, it was just cake. It was part of the process. It was what we were doing. Where most athletes, that's where we feel all the resistance in the coaching, right? Hey, well, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to grow you. And it's resist, resist, resist. And we feel that in parenting as well. So the only thing, yeah, I wanted to add here, Paul, was the power of the model is the awareness of the model and knowing that this exists, and that her and I were able to have that conversation with this language. And I knew exactly what she meant. Yeah. Yep. That you're right. Deception is coming. And when it does, we will move right through it together.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I'm just looking at the chat, and Chrisanne mentioned it's all black. I'm hoping that everybody could see the model that we held up. So give us a thumbs up if you were able to see that model. Otherwise, that might have been, hopefully our pictures at least showed up so they had something to look at if there was a black screen.
Okay.
Oh, Kay said, yeah, they could see. Okay, awesome. All right, so the other piece that we were talking about, that we were going to talk about, and we can talk about a few things. And I think one of the things for those of you that are new, that are like, what is this Growth U thing? Like, what is GU Sport? What is that? So we actually have programs for young athletes and for parents and for coaches to go through and learn different models, because mindset is such an aspect that I think is undercoached, because we spend so much time with the X's and O's. And I was guilty of that as a coach, for 43 years. Spent a lot of times on drills and progressions and all of these other things. And mindset was dripped on them at the beginning of the season. It was dripped on them throughout the season, but not in the level that I could do now with the models that we have here. And Amy, I don't know if you want to speak to that as well, because I know you've worked with so many athletes with these models. So what can you tell anybody watching this right now with regards to some of the models that we have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly that. When you have the language to speak, right? When kids can tell you what's going on in their mind and the shame and guilt goes away, that's a big one, right? Because you get the me too, like, oh, coach, you went through the cycle of performance. Yeah, every day with every new thing. And this is what I'm feeling. And so, Paul, I think it is exactly that. It's the language that you're able to communicate with your athletes and with your family, with everyone. I mean, and you said that Growth U is just a place of growth, a place for those who want to take things to the next level. We have the language and the models to help define the things that you're already feeling, and allow us to work through them together.
Yeah. And as we talked about, in order to create that identity, you need 30, 45, 60 days. Well, guess what? Our programs are that length. We do have an intro program called Game Changers, which I will put a link in actually right now, because I have that copied. And it's just basically a quick introduction to what we were speaking to today. And there's a little bit more, because in that deception phase that we were speaking to, there are several deception categories that you could be put into. And I call it the VR specs, but there's the victim, the rut dweller, the list goes on, and we could go into deep detail in that. But understanding, when you're hitting deception and athletes are feeling it, they can identify, oh, I'm being a rut dweller right now, or I'm being a victim, or I'm a success seeker, or whatever model or whichever language that they want to use that they feel like they're fitting into. And then their conscious brain can say, okay, we don't want to be there. We want to be somewhere else. And so it gives them, again, to Amy's point, a language to communicate with coach to communicate with the athlete, rather than a coach saying, hey, you're not working hard enough, right? Like, you're not doing this. And so instead of attacking, you're speaking to a habit or a pattern. And all of a sudden that resistance that an athlete could feel and get angry at the coach, and it just disappears, because that language is now on a level playing field. So I just put that little link in there, and that program is a great intro. And once an athlete goes through that, they now qualify to move into one of the bigger programs to spend a little bit more time to create that identity. And again, we have programs for coaches as well. So the next model that I wanted to share that we said we would talk about is the 4 laws of focus. All right. And again, to Amy's point, every time we share a model, it's like, this is my favorite model. This is, so I think, really the cycle of performance or cycle of growth, whatever you want to call it, in creating that identity, right? So we want to create this identity with our conscious brain. And our unconscious brain is going to battle us. To Amy's point, our brain just keeps us safe. It keeps us the way we are. And we don't want to change because that could be dangerous. It puts us into an uncertainty growth area. And the brain doesn't like that. The unconscious brain doesn't like that. However, if our conscious brain laser focuses in on whatever it is that we're doing, so what we focus on, we find. What we focus on grows. What we focus on seems real, and what we focus on, we ultimately become. So this is the conscious brain where the captain resides. I used to teach psychology for many years, and so I spoke to my students about the captain. That's a little voice in your head, right? That's your conscious brain. Your unconscious brain would be the one, don't do it. It's like the little, devil on your shoulder, keeping you safe, or whatever that looks like, right? But what we focus on is so important. And again, your brain will get what you focus on. And so focus on what you want. Don't focus on what you don't want. Because as a mountain bike rider, riding down a single track trail in the woods, and your brain sees the tree, and your brain goes, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. What happens? You hit the tree. Why? Because your brain was focused on it. If you're going down that trail and you're like, focus on the trail, look ahead, find the trail, the trees and the rocks disappear and you stay on that single track trail. And so that's one example of law of focus. Amy, I'm sure you've got a couple other examples.
I know I could go in so many amazing directions with this. It's focus, especially for athletes. How many times have we heard that, or how many times as coaches and parents have we said that, like, focus, and they're like, I am focus on what? Like, what does this even mean? And I love this model and, all of the programs and this language, because it helps the athletes and us to understand, what does focus really mean? And Paul just beautifully described what focus does for us. Sometimes I use the analogy of Google, right? Like when you go into Google and you want to Google something, like I want, a brand new iPhone. So I type in IPHO. Google knows exactly what I'm looking for. It has a perfect memory of everything that I've ever searched for before. So does our brain, right? So does our unconscious. And so to Paul's point, when I go on the trail and I'm thinking, don't hit these things, don't do this, I am just Googling all of the things and all of the references that I already have that failed me. And then I wonder why my nervous system, i.e. my computer, is leading me astray, even though my emotions want something different. And so when you teach focus, it allows us as coaches and as parents and as athletes to really understand what's going on. Focus is really just a filter. It's filtering for the things that you say that you want, right? It's focusing on the what I focus on, I find, right? It's right there. And then it allows me to use the references that I've already created, especially in sport, over and over again, to do and execute the skill set, right? Or the thing that I know I'm capable of doing. So focus is a powerful tool. And I love that we're able to use these models to explain to ourselves and to athletes what we really mean.
Love that. So I'm just looking at the time. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I think it's just still Kay and Christiane. So everybody else, you will be seeing this on recording. We will make sure that you get a copy of this in your email. And Kay just said these models are so great. Thanks, Kay. Yes, they are. We do have a few minutes left. Amy, should we pull up the VIP model, or do you want to talk about anything specific to our coaches and parents that are watching this on replay?
No, I mean, I think that go check out the 5-Day Game Changer. It is written for athletes and coaches. And when I say that it's written for that, that means that it says athlete and coaches, please replace with guitar player / performer / I want to be a better mom, because that's really what we are here at Growth U. This is a beautiful platform of growth. And that Game Changer model just does a really Game Changer program, does a good job in 5 short days to teach you what it is we do. You're not going to see change in 5 days, right? Because we just taught you. You're going to sit in the middle of inception through those 5 days. So growth will happen in some of the larger programs, but I do think it's a perfect opportunity for you to say, what is this that they're actually talking about? And is this for me? So we're pretty positive that once you go through those 5 days, you will quickly understand that, yes, this is exactly for me. And we can't wait to introduce you to your next best program based on what your needs are. And Paul and I and the rest of the team will be here to match you with that journey.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for watching this on replay, and thank you for Kay and Chrisanne for being here live. Love having a little audience. And yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to Amy or myself, and we would love to set up. If you have a team that wants to go through this together so that you're all speaking the same language as a coach, and Amy can speak, she's taken so many teams through this. And I'll tell one, actually, I'll let you tell the story of what the college coach, and I think it was in Portland or maybe it was in Washington, where it was something to the effect that once she took all of her freshmen, she made all of her recruits take this program. And when they came in, Amy, I'll let you finish that story of how when they were freshmen in their first year, it was more like having sophomores, right?
Sophomores. Yeah, the feedback that we got from coaches was exactly that. When you take a program, it's almost like skipping a year, right? It's almost like skipping a year. And I did have that experience exactly with a soccer team that we worked with in Florida, do exactly that. We brought in all of their recruits prior to, and the current kids took the programs as well. And when we entered into that fall, because soccer is a fall sport, they were ready to go. They were all speaking the language, and yeah, next level right away.
Love that. And for those of you watching, obviously, we all went through COVID together, and what we know of our high school athletes right now, my daughter's an elementary school teacher, kids are about 2 years behind, right? Physiologically, or not physiologically, but cognitively, right? They lost a big gap when they couldn't do stuff and they weren't socializing. So this is a really good way to get them caught up from an athletic and just a cognitive standpoint of some mental focus of what they really want to get out of life. So with that, thank you for showing up. Amy, any last words?
No, we'll see you guys all inside the programs.
All right. Take care. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Amy.